everybody, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to Spooky Sunday. Now if you're new here, please feel free to like and subscribe and add me on Instagram. I'll drop it below at Miss Blondie B. And today I'm so excited. So we're talking about one of my favorite scary stories is the Villisca Axe Murder House. Now, the Villisca, this happened obviously in Villisca, and it occurred between the evening of June 10th, 1912, and the early morning of June 11th, 1912. Now, 6 members of the Moore family, and 2 house guests, were found bludgeoned to death in their residence. The Moore family consisted of the parents, Josiah, or he was also known as J.B., 43 years old, and Sarah Moore. Their 4 children, Henry Montgomery, age 11, Mary Catherine, age 10, Arthur Boyd, age 7, and Paul Vernon, age 5. They were a wealthy family, and they were pretty well known and well liked in the community. And J.B. worked in one of the local stores. Now, on June 10th, 1912, Mary Catherine, their daughter, had invited her friends Ina and Lena Stinglinger to spend the night with them at their home. That evening, after the girls and the Moore family attended the Presbyterian, the Moore family had attended their Presbyterian church, where Sarah had ran a Child's Day program. It had ended at 9:30, and the Moores and then Stinglinger sisters walked to their home, arriving between 9:45 and 10 p.m. Their daughter, Mary, had called the Stinglingers' parents and asked if they could stay the night. Their older sister picked up the phone and said that she would pass the message on to her parents. Now, everything, nobody thought anything funny. It wasn't until 7 a.m. the next day when their neighbor, Mary Peckman, became concerned since it was warm, it's summer, and she had yet to see the Moores outside doing their chores. So she went over and knocked on their door. She thought maybe they weren't feeling well. Perhaps they were sick. They had recently had smallpox and were quarantined to their home. So she knocked. They didn't answer, like I said. So she checked the door. It didn't open. It was locked from the inside. So, being the nice neighbor that she was, even though the house was oddly quiet, she went out back and let out their chickens and proceeded to finish hanging up her clothes on the clothesline. Now, after a while, she still hadn't heard anything. So she had called her brother. She had called JB's brother, Ross. And he came over, knocked on the door, no response. So he produced a key. After looking to a bedroom window, not seeing anybody, he produced a key and came in the house while the neighbor Peckman stood on the porch. Moore had went into the parlor. He had opened the guest bedroom door, and that's when he had found Ina and Lena's bodies bloody on the bed. He immediately told the neighbor Peckman to call Hank Horton, Villisca's primary police officer, though before the cops could get there, word had spread fast across the town, and pretty soon almost 100 people had showed up and began traveling inside the house to view the dead bodies, because this is not something that was normal. People weren't used to seeing this. So as police quickly had lost control of the situation when they finally did show, it took the National Guard to stop everybody. The only facts of the crime scene that are known is that 8 people have been bludgeoned to death, presumably with an axe that was found out in the shed that belonged to J.B. And it appeared that everybody at the time had been asleep, with the exception of Ina and Lena. Doctors estimated the time as death shortly before midnight. Curtains were drawn on all the windows in the house except 2, which did not have curtains. Those windows were covered with clothing belonging to the Moores. Now, along with this, there was also rumors that inside the home all the mirrors were also covered, which would make sense during that time because people had believed that you cover the mirrors when somebody had died. Also, all the victims' faces were covered with bedcloths after they were killed. A kerosene lamp was found at the foot of J.B. and Sarah's bed. The chimney was off, the wick had been turned back, and the chimney was found under the dresser. A similar lamp was actually found at the foot of the bed of the Stingling girls. The chimney was also off. And the axe was also found in the room occupied by the Ina and Lena. It was bloody, but an attempt had been made to wipe it off. The ceilings in the parents' bedroom and in the children's rooms showed gouge marks apparently made by the upswing of an axe, and a piece of a keychain was found on the floor in the downstairs bedroom, along with a broken piece of a watch bracelet was found in the bed of Lena and Ina. A pan of bloody water was discovered on the kitchen table, as well as a plate of uneaten food. A bloody bowl, which was covered in ink-stained fingerprints because the murderer had knocked over some ink. The doors in all the house were locked, so the killer had to escape through a window. And the bodies of Lena and Ina were found in the downstairs bedroom, off in the parlor. Ina was sleeping closest to the wall, while Lena hung on her right side. A gray coat had covered her face. Lena, according to an inquest testimony by Dr. F.S. Williams, lay as though she had kicked one foot out of her bed sideways, with one hand up under the pillow on her right side, half sideways. Not clear over, but just a little. Apparently she had been struck in the head and squirmed down into the bed, perhaps 1/3 of the way. There was also a blood stain on her right knee, and what the doctors assumed was a defensive wound on her arm. They also had reported a slab of bacon on the floor downstairs lying near the axe. Weighing nearly 2 pounds, it was wrapped in what he had thought may be a dish towel, and a second slab of bacon, about the same size, was found in the ice box. Now, Lindquist had also made note of one of Sarah's shoes, which he had found on J.B.'s side of the bed. The shoe was found on its side, however, it had blood inside, as well as under it. It was the assumption of the coroner that the shoe had been upright when J.B. was first struck and the blood ran off the bed into the shoe. He believed the killer later returned to inflict additional 20 to 30 blows and knock the shoe over. Additionally, since it is believed that when they came home that night, the killer was awaiting for them in the attic, and that's why they didn't know, and he had snuck out of the attic when everybody had went to bed and murdered the entire family. So, to prove this evidence, 2 cigarettes in the attic suggested that the killer or killers had waited patiently until they went to sleep. The killers seemed to begin in the master bedroom where J.B. and Sarah were sleeping. The killers began in the master bedroom where J.B. and Sarah were asleep. J.B. had, for some reason, received more blows from the axe than any other victim, and his face had been cut to such an extent that one of his eyes was missing. They had used the blade of the axe on J.B. while using the blunt end on the rest of the victims. Perhaps the killer, for some reason, was more angry at J.B. than he was his wife and children. Perhaps that's why J.B. received so many blows and he got the sharp end of the axe. When the police proceeded into the children's rooms, they discovered that the children had to be next. They had found bludgeoned Herman, Mary Catherine, Arthur, and Paul in their head, bludgeoned in their head in the same manner as their parents. They believe that all the victims were asleep, with the exception of Lena. I believe I'd already said that. They thought maybe she was awake, tried to fight back. Hence, she did have a defensive wound. And as she was found lying crossways across the bed. Now, what I find interesting here is how come only one child was awake? This is a rather noisy crime. Why was everybody still in bed? Now, there was no witnesses, but because Lena was apparently still awake, a neighbor had heard the screams of a young girl in the night, but went back to sleep. Now, over time, there's been many possible suspects have emerged. Reverend George Kelly, Frank F. Jones, William Mansfield, Loving Mitchell, and no relation to the Moores, but a Henry Lee Moore. George Kelly was even tried for the murder, but the first ended in a hung jury, while the second trial ended in an acquittal. And all other suspects in the investigation were also exonerated. Even Sarah's own brother-in-law, who she supposedly hated and he hated her, became a suspect, but was found out to be innocent. Now that you know the story of the murders and how the killer had hidden the attic, it is worth noting that the people who lived behind them were also murdered. The Waynes, a man and his wife and their child, were murdered by an axe that the husband had borrowed from a neighbor, and that was left outside the door of their home. And in that case, there was evidence that the killer had climbed out through a window. All these murders, though, had originated in Colorado. You see, this was a serial killer, and he proceeded to go on a killing spree through the Midwest. He was never found. He was never caught. He was thought to maybe even be a wealthy man. Perhaps he was a transient. Nobody ever found out. But one thing, he always used an axe. And it was never an axe of his own. It was an axe that was found on his property. And even the neighbor whose axe was used to kill the Waynes, it was when she found it, she just assumed that it was chicken blood, because she had no idea. She couldn't even fathom somebody murdering somebody with an axe. Now, the Villisca Axe Murder house still resides today. It has quite the history of being extremely haunted, crazy haunted, where people claim that there's some sort of evil in the house. It definitely got worse because in 1994, the house was, the people who bought the home, because there's been 7 families since this who have owned the home, and in 94, the family who bought it decided to renovate it back to how it was, to its original condition in 1912, and turn it into a museum. The house is actually a historical home now. But since that happened, people have lived there, people have visited. They claim of seeing apparitions of both the children and the parents throughout the home. They hear strange sounds, strange knocking sounds, screaming, and more can be heard. It's thought to be one of the children who awoke before she was bludgeoned to death. Because it could just be residual haunting. But that screaming, that knocking sounds a lot of times, they could be poltergeists, but they don't always turn out to be good. Guests have even claimed to see random pools of blood on the floor. And when they go to get help, the blood mysteriously disappears. And ghost groups and psychics both confirm that the house is haunted by the family and that they will remain restless until their true killer is finally known. Though it is not just the family that haunts the home, claims of evil haunt it too. Perhaps even the killer himself. EVPs have been captured of growling noises in the home, children calling for their mother, and even the faint whisper of them, not loud enough for them to hear, and at the end saying, "That is the murderer." So perhaps you're getting closer on figuring it out. But one thing's for her, sure, this house is evil, with the exception of the family. So the family's probably good. I mean, they could be a residual haunting, but they have unfinished business. Their life was taken from them in such a violent manner. But at the same time, could the killer be haunting the home? Or there's just something evil there to begin with. But people, I mean, it's never good if you're hearing growls. And to hear knocking and growling at the same time, that's not a good sign. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the story. The Villisca Axe Murder House. I'm hoping to have a part 2 pretty soon where I go into the other murders that went on with this serial killer. I know it's a little late. This is definitely probably going to be out like around 1 in the morning. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. I couldn't sleep, so I've been kind of tired and I had a lot of homework to do. Anyways, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I always say, like and subscribe. I appreciate everybody watching my videos. Thank you so much. And I hope you guys have a great night. Don't forget, I know I say this all the time, but stay away from people. Stay in your house. Wash your hands. If you go find hand sanitizer, use it. I think we're, in 3 weeks of quarantine now? Are we going on the 3rd week? This is horrible. I hate this. I just want to go, I don't know, I want to go to the mall. Well, no, not the mall. I hate our mall. But maybe, I don't know, go to Target and actually walk around. Anyways, have a good night. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.